An ordinary bus ride that no one would remember was about to turn into a moment that would change several lives forever, and no one on board had any idea that the quiet old man sitting near the back carried a past powerful enough to silence a room and teach a lesson that could never be erased. The bus hissed loudly as it rolled to a stop at the corner of Jefferson Avenue and Elmwood Street, its tired doors groaning as they folded open. A steady line of passengers climbed aboard, their shoulders slumped and faces worn down after another long day. Among them was an elderly black man who moved slowly but with purpose. His steps were careful and measured, shaped by time and experience rather than weakness. In one hand he carried a small bag of groceries. In the other he held a solid wooden cane, its surface smooth from years of use and countless grips. He made his way down the aisle without rushing, ignoring the impatient sighs and shuffling feet around him. When he reached an empty seat near the back, he turned and lowered himself carefully, resting the cane against his knee. His posture was straight, his movements calm. He looked out the window as the bus pulled away, the evening light falling across his face and revealing deep lines carved by decades of hardship, endurance, and quiet wisdom. Most passengers barely noticed him. To them, he was just another old man trying to get home. A child stared for a moment before being pulled back by a distracted parent. A woman offered a brief, polite smile before returning to her phone. The bus filled with the usual sounds of city travel, engines humming, conversations overlapping, notifications chiming, yet through it all, the man remained still and composed, his eyes following the streets as if they carried memories only he could see. There was something steady about him, something grounded. He did not fidget or glance around nervously. He did not seek attention or sympathy. He simply sat, present and patient, as though the world had already tested him in ways no crowded bus ever could. But not everyone saw dignity, not everyone understood silence, and not everyone knew how dangerous it could be to mistake calm for weakness. As the bus slowed again, brakes screeching sharply, it stopped near Lincoln High School. The mood inside changed instantly. The doors opened and a burst of loud energy flooded in. 4 teenage boys climbed aboard, laughing too loudly, shoving each other playfully, their voices sharp and careless. Their backpacks hung off one shoulder. Their confidence filled the narrow space like smoke. They stood near the front at first, scanning the bus, their eyes jumping from seat to seat. They were not looking for a place to sit. They were looking for entertainment. One of them, tall with a baseball cap turned backward, nudged his friend and tilted his head toward the back of the bus. His grin spread slowly. "Yo, check him out," he muttered, not bothering to lower his voice enough. The others followed his gaze and smirked. Their laughter grew louder as they started moving down the aisle. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. A few glanced at the old man, then quickly looked away. A woman hugged her purse tighter. A man stared hard at his phone as if it were suddenly fascinating. The teenagers stopped a few steps from the elderly man, spreading out just enough to block the aisle. "Hey, old man," the boy in the cap said, leaning against the seat in front of him. "You miss your stop at the retirement home or what?" The old man did not respond. He continued to look out the window, his hands resting calmly on his cane. His silence only encouraged them. Another boy, shorter, wearing a hoodie pulled low over his head, laughed and pointed at the cane. "That thing for walking, or is it the only thing keeping you upright?" He snorted and the others burst out laughing. No one on the bus spoke up. The silence felt heavy, uncomfortable. Everyone could hear what was happening, but no one wanted to be involved. Fear and avoidance filled the air. The boys edged closer, their voices louder now, sharper. "Bet he's got cash in that bag," one said. "What you got there, Grandpa? Cat food?" Their laughter echoed against the bus walls. Then, for the first time, the old man moved. He slowly lifted his head and shifted his gaze away from the window. The movement was small, but it carried weight. Something changed in the air. Even the boys hesitated for a brief moment, though they did not understand why. The pause did not last. The boy in the baseball cap leaned in closer, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's wrong, Grandpa? Cat got your tongue?" He tapped the old man's cane lightly with his sneaker. The sound was sharp and disrespectful. The old man's grip on the cane tightened slightly, but his expression remained calm. He raised his eyes and met the boy's stare. There was no anger in them, no fear. Just a steady, piercing calm that made a few passengers swallow hard. A young woman clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. A man near the back cleared his throat, then looked away. Still, no one intervened. The boy in the hoodie leaned forward, laughing. "You deaf or something? Maybe he don't even speak English." The laughter came again, louder, forced. The old man shifted his posture, straightening his back. He placed the cane firmly on the floor. The motion was slow and deliberate, like someone preparing to speak not out of emotion, but out of purpose. One of the boys, smaller than the rest, glanced around nervously. "Maybe we should chill," he whispered. The others ignored him. "You got a problem, old man," the boy in the cap pressed. "We're just having fun. Lighten up." The old man finally spoke. His voice was low, calm and clear, cutting through the noise like a blade. "Do you boys always find fun in bothering strangers?" The bus fell silent. Even the teens were caught off guard. They had expected anger, maybe shouting. Not this. "What's it to you?" the boy in the hoodie snapped, trying to regain control. The old man tilted his head slightly. "Because I've met young men like you before. Different time, different place. They didn't laugh much when they learned what real fear feels like." The laughter died instantly. The teens exchanged uncertain looks. Their confidence began to crack, but the boy in the cap refused to back down. "What you gonna do, scare us with your cane?" he scoffed, though his voice lacked its earlier strength. The bus turned a corner sharply. One of the boys stumbled and grabbed a rail to steady himself. The old man did not move. His cane held firm like an anchor. "You think this cane is what I lean on?" the old man asked calmly. "No, boys, this cane is just wood. What holds me up is something far stronger." The boy in the cap swallowed. "Yeah, what's that?" he asked, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. The old man took a slow breath. "When I was your age," he said, "I carried something heavier than a cane. I carried a rifle through jungles half a world away. I was 19, barely older than you. Vietnam." The words seemed to echo inside the bus. He continued, his voice steady but filled with memory. "We didn't have time for jokes like yours. We had to grow up fast, too fast. Some of us never came home." He paused briefly, his fingers tightening on the cane. "Those who did come back carried more than gear. We carried scars, some you can see, most you can't." The smallest boy stared at the floor. The hoodie kid stopped smirking. "Fear isn't being laughed at on a bus," the old man said softly. "It's hearing a sound behind you and not knowing if it means death. It's watching a friend fall and knowing you can't stop." His voice wavered for a moment, then steadied again. "And you know what else I carried. Discipline, respect, and the understanding that real strength isn't about tearing others down." The bus was completely silent. The passengers remained frozen in their seats, drawn into the weight of the old man's words. Some stared at him openly now, others looked away, pretending not to listen while absorbing every sentence. The air inside the bus felt heavier than before, thick with reflection and unspoken emotion. The boy in the hoodie shifted his feet and spoke quietly, his earlier bravado gone. "We didn't mean anything by it, man." The old man nodded slowly. His expression softened just a little. "I know you didn't," he said. "But words carry weight. You never know what someone else is carrying." The bus slowed again, brakes sighing as it approached another stop. The doors opened, but no one moved. The teenagers stood awkwardly in the aisle, unsure of what to do. Their laughter had vanished, their confidence had drained away, replaced by discomfort and shame. The boy in the baseball cap stared at his sneakers. "Look," he said after a long pause, "we were just messing around." "Messing around can get you into trouble," the old man replied quietly. "Sometimes trouble you can't walk away from." The boy in the hoodie swallowed hard. "Did you lose people out there?" The old man nodded. More than I care to count, good men, brave men, some never made it home, others came back but never really left the war behind. His gaze drifted for a moment as if he were seeing something far away. Strength is fragile when it's tested the wrong way. The smallest of the boys finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. We didn't mean to disrespect you. Disrespect isn't just words, the old man said. It's how you carry yourself, remember that. A woman near the front of the bus broke the silence. Her voice was firm but kind. You boys should be grateful. You just received a lesson most people never get. Several passengers nodded in agreement. The teenagers glanced around, suddenly aware of every eye on them. One by one, they murmured quiet apologies as they shuffled toward the front. At the next stop, they stepped off the bus. Their loud energy stayed behind. The doors closed, sealing in a new stillness. The bus moved again, and the silence that followed was different now. It wasn't tense. It was thoughtful. Passengers exchanged glances filled with admiration and guilt. A few wiped at their eyes. The old man leaned back into his seat, his cane resting against his knee. He returned his gaze to the window as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Soft murmurs spread through the bus. Some passengers shared stories of parents and grandparents who had served. Others simply whispered words of respect. As the ride continued, the atmosphere shifted. Where there had been avoidance, there was now awareness. Where there had been fear, there was reflection. A young woman sitting across from the old man finally spoke. "Thank you," she said softly, "for what you did, for what you went through." He nodded once. "I did what I had to do. That's all any of us can do. What matters is what you do with the life you're given." The bus slowed near Ashland Avenue. The old man rose carefully, steadying himself with his cane. Several passengers instinctively made room for him. Before stepping off, he turned slightly and spoke one last time. "Be kind to each other. You never know what battle someone is fighting." He stepped onto the sidewalk. The doors closed behind him. The bus pulled away, leaving behind a group of passengers carrying something heavier than groceries or briefcases. They carried a story, a reminder that quiet dignity can be more powerful than noise, and that respect costs nothing but means everything. The teenagers walking home carried it too, whether they realized it yet or not, and that lesson would follow them far longer than the ride ever could. As the bus continued down its route, something invisible yet powerful lingered inside it. The kind of silence that does not feel empty but full of thoughts people were not ready to speak out loud. Every passenger seemed changed in some small way, as if they had witnessed something rare and personal that could not be undone. The driver glanced in the mirror once, then again, his face serious. He had seen plenty during his years behind the wheel, arguments, fights, cruelty, but moments like this were different, moments that reminded people who they were supposed to be. A man in a worn jacket shook his head slowly and whispered to no one in particular, "That old man has lived more life than all of us combined." A woman beside him nodded, pressing her lips together as if holding back emotion. The city passed by outside the windows, streetlights flickered on, cars rushed past, life moved forward as it always did, unaware that something meaningful had just taken place on a tired bus filled with strangers. The young woman who had thanked the old man stared out the window, replaying his words in her mind. "Be kind to each other. You never know the battle someone is fighting." The sentence echoed again and again, settling deep inside her chest. She thought about her father, about the way he rarely spoke about his past, about the heaviness in his eyes when certain memories surfaced. She realized how little she truly knew about the silent struggles people carried every day. Near the back, an older couple sat hand in hand. The man squeezed his wife's fingers gently. He had served years ago too. He had never talked about it much. Watching the old man stand his ground without anger stirred something long buried inside him. Further up, a teenager who had witnessed the scene from a seat near the middle stared at his reflection in the dark window. He wasn't part of the group. He hadn't laughed, but he hadn't spoken up either. The thought weighed on him now. Silence, he realized, could also be a choice, and sometimes it was the wrong one. The bus slowed at another stop. People stepped off. Others climbed on, unaware of what had just occurred. Yet something remained in the air, like a quiet promise to do better. Miles away, the four teenagers walked home in silence. Their backpacks felt heavier. The jokes that usually filled their walk were gone. Each step echoed with the old man's words. The boy with the baseball cap kicked a pebble across the sidewalk. "I didn't think he'd say all that," he muttered. The smallest boy nodded. "I felt stupid," he admitted. Like real stupid. The hoodie kid shoved his hands into his pockets. "My grandpa served too," he said quietly. "Never talks about it." No one laughed, no one mocked. For the first time, they walked without noise, each one carrying a new awareness they did not yet know how to name. Back on the bus, the route neared its end. The driver announced the final stops. The passengers gathered their things more slowly than usual, still wrapped in their thoughts. When the bus finally emptied, the seats felt different. The space felt different, as if the memory of the old man's presence had settled into the fabric of the ride itself. The driver shut off the engine and sat for a moment before standing. He looked down the aisle one last time, then shook his head quietly. "Some people teach lessons without ever trying," he murmured. Outside, the old man walked carefully down the sidewalk, his cane tapping softly against the concrete. He did not look back at the bus. He did not need to. He had said what needed to be said. He passed a row of small houses, lights glowing warmly through their windows. Somewhere nearby, a radio played an old song. The sound made him smile faintly. He thought about the friends he had lost. The ones who never got the chance to grow old. He carried them with him always, not as pain, but as purpose. When he reached his door, he paused for a moment, looking up at the darkening sky. Another day survived. Another lesson passed on. Inside the homes along the bus route, people would talk about what they had seen. Some would share it with family. Others would keep it to themselves. But all of them would remember. They would remember the quiet old man with the cane, the calm in his voice, the strength in his silence, and the truth that respect is not about fear or power, but about understanding. This was not just a story about teenagers and a veteran. It was a reminder that every person carries a history, that every stranger has lived a life you cannot see. Kindness costs nothing, respect costs nothing, but the absence of both can cost more than anyone realizes. And sometimes, the most powerful lessons arrive when you least expect them. On an ordinary bus ride, from a man who never raised his voice, from a past that demanded respect without asking for it. If this story moved you, carry it forward. Share it, live it, choose kindness even when it is easier to look away, because the world does not need more noise, it needs more quiet strength, more understanding, and more respect, and maybe, just maybe, the next bus ride will be a little different because of it.